October 15th, 2025, we'll get, I could use this, I guess, get people's attention. October 15th, already the middle of October, 12:35 p.m., and this is the Transportation Advisory Board meeting to the Met Council. And I'll call the meeting to order. As you all note from the agenda, we have been publishing the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement in printed form. And I think when we get a little bit deeper into the agenda, I want to talk about how to handle this. But right now, I'd like to have Allison Waka come up. Is Allison with us already? And we talked a little bit about this at exec. And I think as we see what's first on the agenda here with the acknowledgement that it, and we had talked about this some time ago, that we were going to put this in the printed material every time we have an agenda, something that relates to the work of the tab. We'll have this acknowledgement in a printed form. And so we had this discussion at the exec committee about when we should verbalize the acknowledgement as well, and we're trying to tie it to something that made sense from a tribal standpoint, from a practical standpoint as well. And Allison, I thought, had a great idea about how to do it verbally in addition to the written form, and I've asked her to come and visit with us before we get the meeting started, so she can go about her work today too. So. Allison Waka, our tribal liaison for the Met Council, welcome again to the TAB meeting, and please share your thoughts about when you think it'd be an appropriate time to be reading the acknowledgement.
Sure, thank you, Chair. So we, in our discussion, after some thoughts, I was going to recommend that it be read quarterly along with the seasons. So traditionally, I just had fall ceremony this past weekend, and so that's kind of a time for us to have rebirth and regeneration and ask for strength for the next season and so forth, and being thankful that we made it through the last. And so my recommendation was to read it with the seasons, especially being here in Minnesota. We actually, sometimes, most of the time, have all 4 seasons. And so that was my recommendation, to have it quarterly.
Yeah, so this is going to be a decision of our tab on how frequently to read the acknowledgement out loud. And I think we'll take that up when we get into the working portion of the agenda, but to tie it to tribal history and seasonality, seasons changing, I think it's a nice sort of reference point.
And then just additionally, there was the conversation about when there is a big project or process being done to read the acknowledgement beforehand as well.
Yep. Yeah, Chair Barber raised that issue in the exec committee meeting, that we might think about circumstances, and we don't have to put this in a fixed calendar, but let's say that when we make a decision on funding projects for the region, for the regional solicitation, and these projects are going to be going on all over the metropolitan area, that we think that might be an appropriate time to provide a reading of that acknowledgement as well, as we think about those projects starting to be built all over the metro. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, thanks for your input on this. Anybody have any questions for Allison?
And
okay.
I could just add, go ahead. Do you have
Member Jean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question about if you discussed reading this at every meeting. At Ramsey County, we read the land acknowledgement at all of our board meetings,
yes,
as well as some of our community engagements that I have found helpful in making sure that, the conversation remains civil, but also guided in the fact that we are on stolen land.
Yes, thank you so much. The Met Council does read it at every...
Would you pull that microphone a little bit closer?
I'm so sorry. We do read it at every Met Council meeting along with our committee of the whole. So this is a discussion for the committees. They can designate it themselves on how they would like it read. But yes, thank you.
Yeah, so we can certainly consider that idea too when we get a little deeper in the agenda. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think along with the documents that you received, to give a little more background, we do have approximately 75,000 natives living within the metro, over 100 different tribes, and I think a lot of us kind of defer to Shakopee being within the region, but Mille Lacs, Band of Ojibwe, Red Lake Nation, Prairie Island, Indian community all have land within the metro as well. So they're very active tribes within the metro. So just keeping that in mind as well in your work.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad you provided that data about the number of tribal members here and the number of tribes. I told Ellison I had just been down at a U.S. Conference of Mayors leadership team meeting in Oklahoma City. The current president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors is the mayor of Oklahoma City, who's part Osage, and learned that they had 39 tribes in Oklahoma. Most of them not native to the area, of course, as we all know that Trail of Tears incident that happened with so many tribes. But to learn there were about 100 tribes here, it was really quite fascinating, I thought. So.
And we have 11 here, if you don't know, here in Minnesota. Well, thank you.
The other thing I thought was interesting was that to hear that for tens of thousands of years, tribal members have been operating under the same misconception we have, was that we have 4 seasons here. So, but we'll go along with that idea, that notion, and have a conversation here later.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Member Dugan.
Thank you, sir. So you said 75,000 Native Americans, indigenous in
Yeah.
the metro or the state?
In the 7-county
Okay,
area.
all right.
I met with the data demographics staff member here at Met Council, and he went off of the last census, and there was 68,000 on the census itself, but he estimates that it is closer to 75,000
Okay.
by other records, and a lot of tribal members go back and forth, right? So they'll work here, but they live, so it is harder to get that additional read when they're very transit, so.
And about 100 tribes within
Yes,
the state?
yeah, and that's going off of Minneapolis Public Schools and St. Paul Public Schools. I believe there's 111 at Minneapolis Public and about 103, I believe, at St. Paul. That could have changed in the last year, though, but it's still in the hundreds.
Wow. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
sir.
Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, let's, I'll call the meeting to order, and we've got an agenda in front of us. Does anyone wish to modify the agenda in any form or fashion? Hearing nothing, is there a motion to
Anderson?
approve?
Second.
Anderson moves approval, Commissioner Gattel seconds. The adoption of the meeting agenda is published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the meeting agenda is published, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The meeting agenda is adopted. We have something to work from here today. Members of the public, this is your opportunity to come and speak to the tab about a matter of concern to you. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to address us? Okay. All right. Well, we've got a special presentation here. We did approve the agenda. After we get past this portion of the agenda with public invitation to speak, I think we want to recognize Lisa Freeze. And for all of her years, we have that proclamation ready there. Lisa, would you come up here, please? I know this, I can see you're a little bit stunned by this, but so Lisa Freeze, who currently works, I mean, she has a long history in transportation and
Come on up.
yeah. Come on up. Come on
Come on
this
up
way.
to
I
the
got
front.
this. Either that or I'll come over there.
Scoot over.
I've known her since her days at MnDOT and then out at Scott County and 18 years doing technical work for the Met Council and all of the committees. And so congratulations, we understand you're retiring.
I am.
Yeah, and here's a certificate of
thanks.
appreciation from, take a picture from us for, here. 18 years of service. Let me take these off. All right.
Yeah.
Also, thank you so much.
Thank you
And
very
It's been a
much.
pleasure getting to know you over the years.
Yes.
And
We've
appreciate
had a
your
lot of
sense of
things.
humor. Yeah, we've done a lot of things together.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
And she's a force, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah, she is.
And we'll let her make a few comments, but our current tax chair, Joe McPherson, wants to I think he's going to celebrate her, not roast her, but we'll see what happens here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TAB. Just in honor of her, it's a privilege to recognize her today.
Lisa will be coming back up here next to Joe now.
Yeah, you
We're
gotta
going to let
come
you
back
have
here
a
and
chance.
stand next
Don't
to
be
me.
ducking out there.
So I think in recognition of all the years that she's put forward in here, the benefits to not only our communities, but also the process that we work on day in, day out here, whether it's TAB, TAC, the Planning Committee, or the Funding and Programming Committee. You've been a great champion and a great supporter of that. So we appreciate all the work that you've done. Is there anything you'd like to add or any words of wisdom?
For those of you who don't know me, I actually had a life before transportation as a land use planner, and I worked for St. Paul and a couple of the South Dakota County cities. So I feel like I've made a big impact on the region, and I've had a lot of great support from people all across the region. And I really appreciate being able to work at a regional level. This has been the fun part of my job, I gotta admit that. And so thank you very much for allowing me to be involved with all of you.
And what's the
Thank you.
timing, Lisa, on retiring, and what are your plans?
Well, I'm actually, my last day in the office is the 24th of October, so it's fairly quick.
Yeah.
And I have two sons, both of them are school teachers in St. Paul. One of my sons, him and his wife are expecting their first child, so I expect I get to do some grandparenting, and then some travel with my husband. And I keep hearing about returnships at Scott County, but I don't know what that means, so we'll see what that means. Thank you.
All right, okay,
right.
good, thanks, Lisa. Joe will be back up with us shortly.
Just good.
Let me get my
I
materials
say
here.
one thing real
Oh,
quick.
yes, please, Connie.
I have a history with her going back. I was talking earlier about a 6:15 meeting yesterday morning. She was the reason. She set it up at 6:15, but she did buy donuts and coffee for everyone. I must say, and I know the last 18 years was with Scott County, but I must talk about a little bit about her MnDOT career. When last time I was in this job, in the Metro job, she was a South Area manager, worked with Dakota, Scott, and Carver counties. And then one day she came and told me that I'm going to be your boss. And she did become my boss. She became deputy commissioner. She was in that position, and then her and I went through I was right during the bridge collapse, or I was right before it. She had the job, and it was some difficult times that we went through, and I appreciate all that, and then politics happened, things changed, and anyway, she moved on and went to Scott County, but I learned a lot from her, learned about partnership, putting deals together with the counties and cities, and you'll be missed. You have a fingerprint, you have your fingerprint all over the metro region. A lot of people probably don't feel it, but I do, and many others do as well. So thanks for what you've done. Thanks for your friendship.
Yeah, thanks, Connie, for those additional remarks. From a reports standpoint, I can give you a quick update. We had a policymaking committee meeting starting at 10. That drifted into the time we had set aside for the executive committee, but it was important that we continue that conversation as we work towards being able to come to you guys with some suggestions on what we think the next regional solicitation ought to look like and how it ought to be framed up. The questions that we looked at today, and the purpose of the meeting today was to look at recommending local match percentages on active transportation applications. We got through that. Discussed the 2026 schedule, review the application connection to the 2050 TPP goals and objectives, and review program performance measures and data tracking. We had a couple of key questions that really dominated the conversation, one more so than others. The first one that took less time was, we've been dedicating at the regional level $25 million per solicitation for arterial bus rapid transit all the costs have gone up. All of us involved, whether you're in public service or not, know that costs have gone up. And so we talked about a $30 million minimum target for ABRT. And then the question was, well, do we want to provide a maximum amount for ABRT or leave it kind of open so that we have some flexibility there? And if they needed more money, where would it come from? And the notion would be that it would come out of the 60 million that you're going to see targeted for transit in that portion of the regional solicitation. So we'll have that issue to talk about at some subsequent time. And I'm thinking probably December, because we're going to have one more meeting of the policymaker group in November to get through some of the final issues, and then everything will be distributed to folks. We also had a long discussion about community considerations, is what we're calling it. Community impact funds, it's the former equity that we had as a category, and that was subsumed into every other category across the regional solicitation. And what those considerations ought to be, and how they could best function. A lot of different opinions and thoughts, I'd say a very high-level conversation, and a very important conversation to be having with different views on things as we try to move towards something that makes some sense from a community consideration standpoint. So I think that'll be another purposeful and important part of the next conversation, along with some of the scoring activity. So that's kind of it from the special projects, or not special projects, but the policymaker working group standpoint for me. And then, Connie, I'm going to turn to you now, and we'll get the report on MnDOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, as always, talk about safety and the numbers, fatality, the most important thing that we should be doing, taking care of our users of our highways. As of mid-October here, we've had 300, this is statewide numbers I'm going to talk about only today. 300 folks have passed. That compares to last year, this time 372. And that's a big percentage less. And I'm anxious to work with our experts and figure out why. And it's trending all year. We've been about 20-some% less, trending less. So that, which means that if you extrapolate beyond the data, it's going to be less than 400, which is 400 is kind of a nominal measure that we've had that plateaued for many, many years since the early 2000s, when we did some big changes, went from 800 to 400. It's been plateaued since then. 400 hovered around there, went up around the COVID time, and then now back down to around 400. So, and last year was 480, 477 actually. This year the fatalities were 35 pedestrian, 53 motorcycles. I asked, the number is kind of consistent, a little bit higher than before, and I see a lot more motorcycles speeding out there, and 12 bicycles, 12 ATVs, and only one snowmobile, which we know why. We haven't had much snow. So those numbers are, I guess, better than last year's, but we still have a goal of towards 0 deaths. One item since our last meeting I would need to touch on as it relates to safety. Maybe you heard it on the news, but we had 2 work zone fatalities. One was down on 35 W by Trunk Highway 13, Burnsville Parkway area, where we were working on 35W. A contractor, Schaefer, backed a truck into one of his own employees. And it's all under investigation, obviously, and we don't know the exact reasons why, but that was, so that kind of threw us for a loop, because Lord knows we have all the protocols in place, everything, lessons learned, and everybody knows what we need to do when we're out there. Complacency is always possible with experienced folks that used to it, looking around and making sure that everything is in place before they take an action. So this turned out to be a sad deal, and as we're trying to figure that out, literally less than 24 hours later, another one happened up on our project up in 610 and County 30, and Maple Grove is actually running that project for us, and the same thing happened with a different contractor. He backed the truck onto one of his employees and ran over him and killed him. So it was two double whammies back to back. So broad attention, unfortunately, it takes things like that maybe to talk about it and remind folks of not to be complacent and be very careful of what they do and how they operate out there when there's heavy equipment around. One related topic, last time you may remember I touched on what the department, MnDOT, alongside with contractors and unions are working together, and Department of Admin is actually part of it too, because they have a lot of vertical constructions going on, and Met Council is involved, and the MAC, the airport, as well, as it relates to suicide and suicide in the construction industry. It's a serious item that happens, and believe it or not, things, well, we all know that, things affect different people in a different way. For example, on the first incident that I talked about on 35, where our guys, our MnDOT inspectors were out there, two of the guys saw it actually happen. And then two or three other guys saw the aftermath, after effect, and were severely affected by it, especially those who saw it happen. Imagine that, and how you feel, the guilty feeling maybe, that could I have done something? Could I have yelled? Could I have noticed it sooner and made it, whatever those thoughts are. So we had to, we have a organizational health professional, Dr. Deb Lind, who's been very, very helpful. She has a special way about things to talk to folks, and there's those guys are still dealing with it. And it reminds me back in the day when the 35W bridge collapsed, we had many of our engineers who it affected them, and they all felt, everybody who touched that bridge at one time, it's a big bridge that's been around for a long time, everybody looked at it, inspectors, arm's length inspected it, and had a guilty feeling. Some people quit, some people took a demotion and got out of the bridge building business and did something else. So just want to bring that to folks' attention, to continue to talk about safety and being careful. We want everybody to go home to their families at the end of the day. So in your agencies, I mean, in this case, actually, City of Maple Grove, I don't know if the mayor is here, Mayor Stephenson, there, folks saw it, they were impacted, so that was my safety message. A couple of announcements. Metro, we're going through a freight plan, revisiting our Metro freight plan. Much of the freight starts, ends, and goes through Metro, but my colleagues out in, I say 95%. I have no reason to say it's not, but my outstate district engineers say, oh, no, not everything goes through Metro. Some of it stays up north. But anyway, this is the heart of the center of the universe as far as Minnesota is concerned. I think a lot of metropolitan area in the Midwest, and a lot of freight goes through here. And so we're revisiting a plan that we have, and it takes, as you can imagine, takes a lot of coordination with other modes of, there's trucks, there's the ports, there's the trains, and different ways of delivering freight. And we're just looking at revisiting that to see where the efficiencies could be in involving the industry, the freight industry, and the communities, Especially, we need to listen to the freight industry because there are certain needs that they have for them to be efficient in delivering things. They deliver, they bid jobs by the minute, I mean, 1 minute can make a big difference and whether they take a job or not. And I learned that because as we were talking safety earlier, Mr. Chair, we do a lot of, as practitioners, we do a lot of safety work. And by gosh, whatever we say for safety, it's going to get funded and we're going to do it. And that's, I'm not going to argue with that. However, there are some consequences that needs to be part of the discussion. There was a time, I mean, those folks from Scott County remember, there was where MnDOT proposed a whole bunch of safety fixes along 169, including building J-turns and all kinds of stuff. But there's a lot of businesses, heavy trucks going in and out of different kinds of businesses along south of Chaska in that whole area. That's all there is. And so it started out as a safety project that you would want to make it operable, functionally operational. But because of the concerns that was presented by the businesses to the county and others, and I happened to, back in the day, I was the private company, to work to say, how can we make this a freight project that is safe, basically, change the conversation a little bit. You can still make it safe, but so these types of conversations always happen, and there's different elements of priorities that we need to take care of, and so I think that's kind of why we're going through the freight plan, and hopefully the comment period is open now till October 19th. So there's some links that I can provide later for those if they're interested. We can share those if folks want to comment on the plan. The draft, the final draft is out there for comments. Federal, did they resolve the shutdown, federal government, while we've been here, or no? No? Okay, if not, then I can say a couple things. I don't know, I haven't been watching the news, but hoping that gets resolved. As you may know, that Federal Highway and FTA are not as impacted as others, so they're still working and getting paid. I think it has a lot to do with different pots of money. Eventually, I think it'll catch up with them if it goes on for a long time. But bottom line is our formula funds that gets distributed, projects that we do, that's the reimbursables come to us because the federal highway there is still working. And I think it's true with the FTA, I believe, too. So so that's still going on, and it's fine for now. And then the last couple of things, we are getting ready, as you can imagine, with snow and ice control and winter maintenance. This morning I was at our Oakdale truck station talking to those guys earlier in the morning, and just a note to remind folks, the last 2 years, Minnesota, we got 29 inches of snow, which is very low. The year before, we got 90 inches, 3 years ago. And that was a rough winter. On average, we get 55 inches of snow. So if we can end up, anything, in the last couple of years, it's been somewhat of a challenge. And many people are short of workforce, and being able to get to things for people to be patient and cautious. And I know our guys give it all the best. They don't usually go home until the last snowflake is off the road, or until we kick them, send them home. And but we'll do our best, and again, to be careful and remind everybody of the winter coming. And I can't wait for the first day when that happens. People forget how to drive in the snow, and you will have all kinds of accidents. The body shops will be doing good business. And then the last thing, Mr. Chair, the construction, we're I don't think we've started to button anything up yet, but we're hoping to continue to do a lot of the work and hoping for a long fall to continue on things. And one thing, as it relates to some of the conversations we've had with the issues we've caused with our construction, the issues that we had with some of our major projects, the delays that it caused, communications and things like that. One thing, the goal that we have, and I actually took the first step, for example, next year, we've started on 394. You've noticed the easy pass lanes are closed and they're fixing it. That should be done November here. But next year is when the major challenge will be, where eastbound will be closed. All the lanes going westbound, I think, first. And all that traffic will be on the new easy pass. And then that's for half of the season. And then we'll do the eastbound. That's where the major issues are. So proactively, just last week, I had my construction engineer, and we met proactively along with the City of Minneapolis, Public Works Director, and their traffic engineer. We went together, met with the Downtown Council and Target Corporation. With their bosses, they were there, and to bring it to their attention that you have a lot of people coming in, you're forcing them to come in to work, and to be flexible in their hours. Don't force everyone to work 8 to 5, Tuesday to Thursday, because if everybody wants to leave downtown at 8 or at 5, they're going to be sitting in downtown for a long time before they can get on 394 if they want to go westbound, or vice versa if they want to coming in. So provide flexible hours, flexible days. Mondays and Fridays are official work days too. Spread them out that way as much as possible. So working with businesses, big businesses especially, and the Downtown Council with Adam Dunnick, he was involved in to get the message out as proactively, as quickly as possible. So I think that's about all I have to say, and I'll be done.
Thank you. I think Member Martinson has a question for you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Connie, you'll recall that back in April, you gave us a report about the partial shutdowns of I-94 for the MnDOT work that was happening along that corridor, and you gave a thumbnail idea that there was one-third change in traffic shift. And I, at that time, and you also indicated that MnDOT was collecting data and analyzing it about those traffic shifts. And at that time, I asked for a report to come back to TAB about that. And I'm wondering if you can give us an update on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Member Martinson, I don't have that report with me, but we have, along with the City of Minneapolis, and our construction and traffic folks, they have been looking at the numbers. I don't know what they are, and I can't tell you right now, so I'm not going to say anything. But I will. I'll go back to the shop and look at that and provide it to you.
All right. If you get that to Elaine, then she can disseminate it to everybody.
Okay.
Okay, good. Other questions for Member Seabjim? Yes.
Just a quick question. In regards to the motorcycle fatalities, I was curious, the legislature had passed the lane splitting this last year. Do you feel like that's had an impact on that number at all?
Mr. Chair, member, I think that question has come up before, and we were going to look at that. I think it might be a little soon to determine that. I think I'll go back and check when did the legislation go into effect? It was just recently, just a few months now.
This year, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how much data there is. I know there's a lot more, and I see them go through. I mean, all over the world people do that, but a lot of places that I've seen. So I don't know that, but that's another thing I'll check into and get back to you.
It's a great question, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Important question. We've all had that experience, I think, of them doing the California thing and coming right down between the cars. I had a quick question for you, Connie, and, we're seeing almost one person a week die that's a pedestrian, and one person a week, more than one person a week die that's a motorcyclist. I guess it was the bicyclist I was thinking about, almost one a week. What are we doing around some kind of a communication strategy to be more mindful of people that are operating in a non-motorized way, to try to, we're all working on expanding non-motorized capacity, but it seems like in the process of doing that, we're enhancing risk for people that are moving around in a non-motorized way too. And people aren't paying the kind of attention they should pay to non-motorized movements, people engaged in those movements.
Yeah, right, Mr. Chair. And I think our city and county partners probably have some answers as well. Actually, these numbers, which was 35 pedestrians statewide and 53 motorcycles. So you're right, more than about one a week motorcycle and a little bit less. I think about 2/3 of those are in Metro. For sure, the ped and bike ones, which for obvious reasons is more congested. I don't know, my hope is, I see distracted walkers. I don't know if the people ride on their bikes and check text messages, Mr. Martinson. I don't think people do that. I have seen it done. I'm not saying those are the reasons, but because everybody, I think it goes back to what my dad used to tell me, pretend, as you're starting to drive, pretend everybody is crazy out there. And you watch whatever you see out there and be defensive. Be a defensive driver, walker, rider, whatever it might be. So I don't know. I think technology is a big part of it that will help eventually, and that's about all I can say. Maybe other members may have some thoughts.
Well, you do your best to gather that data, and we'll move on here.
Just a question, if I can.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Connie, as a kid, I always wanted to have a mini bike, and my parents would never let me have it because it was illegal to ride. Now these electric bikes go faster than the mini bike that I wanted back in my youth. Do you think these electric bikes that will go 28 miles an hour, and then there are some that are kind of really off the charts, illegal to go a lot faster than that. Do you think that's going to affect your numbers there, and also design? Are designs going to need to reflect that bikes are going faster?
Well, there is a debate, and maybe, so there's some thoughts there from Amity, but it's kind of a hybrid thing. It doesn't fit with on a sidewalk because it goes too fast, and then out on the road, it's difficult to maneuver as well. I think it's an awesome thing. My personal opinion, I give it to you, and then let others respond to it who know a lot more about it. I think it's an awesome thing for people to be able to ride it and get to, for those who need a little help and can't pedal like Member Martinson and maybe need an electric bike. So Member Foster, you have an answer?
Member Foster, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note around the e-bike thing, and I'm not an expert in this and I don't know all the different classes, but I would bet that part of what you're talking about are e-moto bikes, which are not, they're not bicycles. Again, I don't know all the formal definitions and descriptions about this. Most e-bikes, like if you're using a Turn or one that you buy at a bicycle shop, those don't go more than 20 miles an hour. They have more formal,
Yeah, the e-assisted bike, I think.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I have one. I should know the language. I just want to draw there is a difference between something that looks like an e-bike, electric assist bike, and something that is a motorcycle or more like a motorcycle. They can look really similar. But electric assist, you still have to pedal on them. So I just want us to be real clear about what we're talking about. There was a recent newspaper article, I can send it to you, Elaine, that has a lot of good information on this to be sent out to the rest of the tab.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. You just reminded me that we had this issue in Edina this summer. I think every city has, where the kids are buzzing down the sidewalk and hitting people. And so we've got a new ordinance covering e-bikes. If anybody wants to see it, county or locals, and you haven't already done it yourself, happy to share ours with you. Member Martinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on Member Foster's comments, in fact, there are several classes of e-bikes, and in fact, so there's Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3, and none of those are e-moto bikes. E-moto bikes are electric motorcycles, and that requires, so let's acknowledge the state legislature, through prompting largely from Bike MN, has taken this up and has actually gotten legislation passed in 2024 that was actually based on legislation that was developed by Matt Moore, who is legal counsel for People for Bikes nationally, but he lives here in Minneapolis. And so he had developed statutes for California that were adopted and adapted by our local legislature to actually try to address some of these concerns. And I'll note that that legislation didn't just put the onus on riders, but it actually recognized the need for both education and possibly enforcement with the retailers and wholesalers of these kinds of devices, so that they know what their obligations are when they're selling them to somebody, to inform the consumers about what is and is not allowed with these kinds of devices. They're also, I'll tell you, I was in Irvine recently for a memorial, and the e-moto issue is rampant out there. You have 14-year-old boys, it's all boys, 14-year-old boys, too young to drive cars, but because Irvine is absolutely not bike or pedestrian friendly, it was a community designed for cars. So you have these 14-year-old boys running around, typically going the wrong direction on sidewalks on e-motos. These are not e-bikes. These are e-motos. They're not pedaling. They're flying with a throttle at 30 to 40 miles an hour on a sidewalk, typically going the wrong way. So the issue is real. Bike MN is continuing to work on helping the legislature to further move forward legislation, sensible legislation, good legislation that actually addresses the problems without penalizing bike riders and making things less attractive for people who want to get around by two-wheel vehicles. So
Good. Thanks, Brian.
I
Commissioner?
just want to add a little, Brian's the expert on this, and I'm a beginner, but my electric bike has Class 1, 2, and 3. It does all three of those. And it'll pedal assist or do straight throttle. And my three is, usually the maximum is 28 miles an hour there. Those are not generally allowed on most trails. 20 mile an hour max type 2 is what's usually allowed as a max on trails.
Okay. Education session here today. All right, let's move on to Member Kolash and get an update from the MPCA on what they're working on in this current environment that makes life a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Frank Kolash. I'm Assistant Commissioner for Air and Climate Policy at the Pollution Control Agency. I'll go over a few items that we are focusing on, both at the Pollution Control Agency, but also with the Climate Sub-Cabinet. So first and foremost, later this week, hopefully by the end of the day, we will have the latest version of the draft Climate Action Framework for 2026 that the Sub-Cabinet is publishing out for public comment. This will be the last round of public comment that we've had for this. We've been working on the framework update for about a year and a half now. So be looking for that, and if I can send Elaine the link to that once we have that available if you are interested in that. The Climate Action Framework does have a chapter on clean transportation, and it remains particularly focused on reducing emissions from vehicles, but then also looking for ways that we can have people be able to move around in different ways, because we know that that's another way that we can reduce emissions for the state. And then also ensuring that we have resiliency built into our transportation system as we experience harsher weather and more natural disasters due to the changing climate. Also next week, we will, on Tuesday the 21st, we will have the Governor's Advisory Council on Climate Change meeting from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And that will also be reviewing this final version of the Climate Action Framework so that we hear from the governor-appointed members of that council on the update for the Climate Action Framework. At the end of September, the Pollution Control Agency, the Department of Commerce, MnDOT, and the Department of Health submitted a joint comment letter to EPA opposing their proposals to repeal both the endangerment finding for greenhouse gases for under the Clean Air Act and their proposed repeal of all greenhouse gas emission standards for all classes of vehicle for the nation, including going back to 2012. They want to erase really the history of greenhouse gas vehicle emission standards into the future. So we identified that does not represent the best science on repealing the endangerment finding. We think that the science is clear that greenhouse gases from the largest emission source in the United States are meeting the Clean Air Act criteria for endangering or reasonably endangering human health and the environment moving forward, public health and welfare. We also identified that the reduction or the elimination of the greenhouse gas vehicle emission standards are going to cause more problems than just the removal of greenhouse gas emission standards. They're going to account for a substantial loss in expected emission reductions from other harmful air pollution that comes from vehicles, particularly heavy-duty vehicles, diesel-powered vehicles. And that's going to affect Minnesota for our health, the air that people breathe as they live near the highly driven roadways for gasoline vehicles, but particularly diesel vehicles. And then in other states, it's going to make it much more difficult for them to find their way to get their pollution levels for ozone, particularly ground level ozone, and for particulate matter down below the federal standards to protect the human health and the lungs of people that breathe there. So we're very concerned about, it's not just greenhouse gases that EPA is doing away with, they're going to cause a substantial loss of expected benefits for these other harmful air pollutants that come from the tailpipes of gasoline and diesel engines. Turning more towards positive news, we have a number of grants that you may be interested in for your jurisdictions. One, we are entering the final round of what's called our Resilient Communities grants. We have 2 grants open right now. One is for all communities in Minnesota. The other one is for smaller communities, and that's for populations of 10,000 people or less. These are for planning, for climate resiliency, for wastewater infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, and broad general community resilience. So for all communities across the state, there is $1.6 million available, and then for the small communities, there's $1.1 million available. Unfortunately, this will be our last round for the Resilient Communities grants that we received funding for. We asked for funding in 2023, we received that, and we have granted out more than $94 million to Minnesota communities. This will be our last round for those going forward. We also have an electric vehicle fast charging grant available open for $1.89 million, and this is coming from our Volkswagen settlement funding. And again, we're reaching the end of our Volkswagen settlement funding. And while we originally received an allocation of $47 million for the funding from the Volkswagen settlement, because we did it in phases, we've accrued some interest on the program. So we're going to end up being able to grant out about $52 million throughout the full length of that program, with the 15% focus on electric vehicle infrastructure charging, but then also substantial focus on reducing diesel emissions from on-road and off-road vehicles, with a particular focus on electric vehicles for those heavy-duty replacements and having those demonstrated in Minnesota. And with that, we continue to track what's happening at the federal level. So far, we have not had any funding challenges with the federal shutdown, but we understand that will continue to go on, and if it goes on for a particular amount of time, then we'll be looking at how that impacts our access to grant funding moving forward. And then finally, I will mention for our Climate Smart Food Systems grant, we are working with Department of Agriculture. I anticipate that they will have a grant program available for electric vehicle for on-farm types of vehicles, and then the food production, movement of vehicles for food production very soon. And we are very considered very stable for that funding because it was obligated. It is in our system, and it should be protected by the reconciliation law in 2025. It was signed into place in 2025. So that's what I have for today. I'm open to any questions.
Yeah, good report. For potential grant opportunities, is there a particular part of the website to go to?
Yes, there is, and it is, if you search, and this is the way I do it, search MPCA, grants and loans. It'll take you to a webpage. It's titled Grants, Loans, and Contracts. And so the grants that I mentioned here will be at the top of that page. Those are our most recent offerings.
Very good. Questions from Member Kolash? All right, very good. Oh, sorry. Yes.
I was wondering
Member Bradley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was wondering with the report or the response to the EPA, did you include the effects on things like water or even future generations and things like that?
Thank you, Member. We did not include specifically on water or future generations because we were trying to keep the comments very narrowly focused on EPA's obligation, their responsibilities under the Clean Air Act for the endangerment of human health and welfare. We did talk about the impacts of climate change on Minnesota and what those will be looking like in the future. But we also understand that right now, EPA's perspective is that the Clean Air Act does not authorize them to take action on climate pollution and climate change. That's the specific quote we received last week when we met with the Assistant Administrator for Air and Radiation at the federal level. So we tried to keep it very specifically tailored to their obligations under the Clean Air Act, and that we didn't want to bring in additional obligations that they felt like would be outside of what the plain language of the Clean Air Act said, and we just were pointing out that the science is clear. This is a fact-based decision that greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare.
Any follow-on, Member Bradley?
No, thank you.
Any comment about science and facts you want to share? No, okay. Always a good thing. All right, thanks, Member Kolash. Neither Carl Crimmins nor Bridget Reef could be with us today from the MAC, but she did send in a written report. This is the, today and tomorrow are the 5th and 6th busiest travel days of the year at the airport. They're expecting 50,000 people to go through security today and tomorrow for MEA weekend. So as people wander off to take their families different places for this long weekend, they're busy at the airport, and they anticipate 48,000 people coming back in on Sunday. If you're one of the travelers, I was told to alert all of you that you should keep your eye out for what they call the surprise and delight teams, which will be surprising passengers and providing fun stuff for kids. I don't know what the surprises for passengers are, but anyway, that's
The delays, yeah.
yeah, free upgrade to comfort. I don't know. So that's it for the MAC. And I did get a call from Rick King, who's the chair of the MAC this week too, that he's been there almost a decade as the chair, I think, and he's going to be stepping down and retiring. He's retired from Thomson Reuters some time ago, but he's been continuing to do that work at the MAC. So who will replace him at the MAC, I'm not sure. All right, and then we are on to our member and also our Met Council chair, interim chair, Deb Barber, for an update. And thanks for hanging with us with all the new responsibilities you've got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was my first thing on my report is that, yes, while I am serving as interim chair, my plan is to stay with TAB, especially through the regional evaluation or regional solicitation evaluation process. Invested a lot of time and work in that, and it's hard to train somebody to step into that role. So, for sure through that process, and then we'll make decisions after that. But appreciate all the congratulations that people have provided. I've gotten congratulations and condolences. So, but I would say a month in, so far so good. And then a couple quick reports. So we launched Metro Micro in Blaine, and just want to say that gives us 5 communities community. So in addition to Blaine, it's North Minneapolis, Woodbury, Roseville, and Bloomington. And all of the zones are growing, and it's going very well. So I think we're showing the robustness of the service, not only in more urban, dense areas, but in some of our suburban communities, which is very good. So we'll keep reporting out as we keep expanding zones, but it's going very well. And then very, very exciting news. So I don't know, I'm going to try and turn this and see if you can see.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
All
train?
right. That is the first Green Line extension train going down the tracks yesterday. So we're entering a period of time where we're mostly done with civil construction, but there's a lot of testing that needs to be done to make sure everything works right. So over the next year, there'll be testing, and we're still moving towards opening for revenue service in 2027. But a very, very big milestone for the project. So.
All right, good. Any questions for Chair Barber? All right, yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to comment, thank you so much for bringing micro transit to the city of Blaine. It's a huge improvement to our transit system. And I just wanted to thank you and your staff for also listening to me based on comments from our community and including a drop-in shelter for youth experiencing homelessness that was right on the edge of where the original geographic region was. And you just bumped that outline out just a little bit to include them where about 800 youth experiencing homelessness will be there. So much appreciated and thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that feedback. I know in our pilot project in North Minneapolis, we had something where a grocery store closed down, and so we did the similar thing. And it's really important as we stand these things up to hear back from communities, because we can look at a map and say we think this is the right place, but you all know your communities. So yeah, as we continue to roll these out, definitely reach out. So I'm glad to hear the feedback. That's great.
Member Cashman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Chair Barber, for the great news on the Green Line. So 3 of the Green Line extension stations are in my ward in Minneapolis, and so just want to say how excited we are to see it really coming to life for us, and it's going to be great. And one thing that I've brought to the Met Council members that represent my area is something that I think would be a great addition to our light rail platforms in the future, which might be the opportunity for small-scale commercial in the form of coffee stands, or, baked goods being sold, because it's my hope that so many people along that corridor will take it into work as a commuting pathway. So having them be able to get their coffee in the morning at the stations like you would, in Germany, where we see the kind of baked goods like built into the train stations, I think might be something to consider for the additions on light rail platforms in the future.
I could take that back to the project office. I'm not sure what the
Your head nodding,
rules or
you don't think
regulations
about it,
about
no.
where we can place things, but I'll certainly bring it back to them to find out. So,
Good, thank
actually,
you.
probably more for our operations staff.
Thanks, thanks, Member Cashman, for being entrepreneurial. All right, Gary Hansen, our colleague, want to report on Suburban Transit Authority activities?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The suburban transit providers, the ridership continues to increase. Maple Grove Transit has scheduled extra trips to the University of Minnesota based on ridership demand. Maple Grove also is considering feedback from a work session that they had with their city council regarding potential service improvements resulting from the Joint Transit Needs Assessment Study with Plymouth Metrolink. Southwest Transit's fixed route and express ridership was up 26% last month from a year ago. And their autonomous vehicle ridership was up 20%. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority State Fair ridership increased 17% to a record nearly 150,000, and Renaissance Festival ridership was up more than 8% to nearly 54,000, also setting a record high. And last week at the Minnesota Public Transit Association conference in Rochester, MBTA was recognized with the Management Innovation Award for the successful launch of MBTA's eJust electric vehicles used in Connect microtransit service. Also should mention that former Met Council Chair Charlie Zelli was recognized by MIPTA as a friend of transit. And so I had the opportunity to be there along with a number of other MBTA board members and staff to celebrate that occasion.
No, good. Questions for Member, for Gary? All right, very good. Thanks, Member Hanson. Our TAC chair, anything to report, Member McPherson? Chair McPherson?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I think the only thing I'd strengthen is just another shout out to our construction crews that are out in the field, not only on our state highways, but our local roadway systems and other projects. A lot of development projects, this is a crunch time of year for contractors, so not only is it a busy time, the daylight's getting shorter, but they're also trying to move quicker to get these projects done. So just be aware of that. Try not to follow vehicles into construction zones. That happens all the time. It happens on Highway 10 daily, so just keep an open eye on that. Thank you.
Yeah, good advice. Thank you. We'll have you back up momentarily. Any questions for Chair McPherson? Okay, let's move on into the minutes. We've got minutes for September 17. Any changes or additions? Otherwise, somebody should move approval of the minutes.
Anderson?
We got a motion by Member
second.
Anderson. We have a second? We have a motion and a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the minutes of September 17, 2025 as published, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Those minutes are adopted. We've got one item to deal with here on the consent portion of the agenda. We could have actually had it on either portion of the agenda. We're going to have, I think, an abstention by MnDOT on this issue, but and Connie can explain why. But I think we'll now talk back with our TAC chair again, Joe McPherson, about this Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program planning grant that involves Rondo and reconnecting Rondo.
Yeah.
Chair McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. So this requested action here is Reconnect Rondo. The organization requests that its Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program Planning Grant be added to the 2026 TIP. And so a little background on that, as many of us are aware, MnDOT is currently going through an EIS process on I-94 through St. Paul. And associated with that, a lot of the communities are involved in that. There's partnerships there analyzing what the future of I-94 looks like. And so as MnDOT's going through that process, the Reconnect Rondo organization also put in a grant application. They received $2 million to support their efforts to go through the NEPA process, start some of that preliminary engineering and environmental documentation process. And so with that, they've asked for that to be added to our TIP. On that regard, it was fully supported by the TAC. MnDOT did abstain from voting, and the rationale for that is not that they're against the project or the effort, it's just recognizing the fact that they're going through the EIS process on 94 in that area. They want to make sure that they're staying neutral on this as they continue forward with the EIS. So I can turn it over to Member Sahib Jem if he wants to add anything to that. Otherwise, that's a requested action on this one.
Member Sahib Jem, do you want to add anything here at this point in time? Okay. All right, we can talk about it when we get to the vote. Questions for Chair McPherson on this matter? Someone care to move 2025-29 adoption?
So moved. Jepson.
Second, Martinson.
All right. We got a motion and a second to adopt 2025-29, which is the authorization for the Reconnect Rondo Reconnection Communities Pilot Program Planning Grant be included in the 2026-2029 streamlined TIP by virtue of amendment thereto. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the item say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
I own one.
It's an aye without an explanation, folks. We can talk about that first. All right, the motion's approved. The item is adopted. 2025-29 is approved. The streamlined TIP amendment request is granted. Thank you. And now we're going to go to the information portion of the agenda. I don't know, Connie, if you wanted to explain why you wanted to abstain on this matter or not, but I think a quick explanation would be beneficial.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think it's real, whenever you're working on a EIS process, environmental impact statement, the federal process, you're looking at, you don't presuppose any kind of a solution. You're looking at all options, what's possible, what's not, what works, what doesn't. And Rondo, as you know, their goal is to connect the community north-south through building a bridge from, I think, Lexington to Dale, I believe. you can call it lid or land bridge or whatever, called different ways. So that's something that would force a certain concept. And so that's why we're abstaining from voting and not knowing where the ultimate preferred alternative would be, which is what we're working toward now. So.
Okay, good. Thank you for that explanation. All right, let's move on to the information portion of the agenda. And the first matter we have in front of us is arterial BRT and an update there from Kyle O'Donnell Burrows. Mr. Burrows, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thank you, members of TAB, for having me back. As mentioned, my name is Kyle O'Donnell Burrows. I am the planning manager of arterial BRT at Metro Transit. And I'm here today to provide a short planning update about the arterial BRT program. So today we'll cover two main topics. We'll provide a quick review of our existing arterial BRT network, including a high-level review of ridership trends as well as cost trends over time for our existing network. And then we'll also be providing an update on where we're at on the arterial BRT plan update. So looking a little bit at the screening results that were shared publicly earlier this summer, as well as taking a review of some of our current and upcoming project activities. So as folks know, we have 8 arterial BRT lines planned to be opened by 2030, A line through H line. We have 4 lines currently in operation, including the Metro B line on Lake Street and Selby Marshall, just right out front here. That opened in June of this year. The E line is opening on December 6th of this year, so coming up, a short few weeks away here at this point. And then we have 3 lines, the F line, G line, and H line, in some phase of either project development, so either planning or engineering, to be opened by 2030. When these 8 lines are open, joining the rest of the planned metro network by 2030, about 22% of our regional population will have access to high-frequency, high-capacity metro service, and about 40% of our regional jobs. So getting into a little bit of the high-level ridership review, here today to kind of touch on a couple of questions. First, how has ridership changed in the immediate term after opening day of one of these lines in the corridor? And then how has, for each of the lines currently in operation, how has ridership changed over the longer term? So taking that first closer up look at the near-term ridership growth, what we see is some initial ridership growth following opening day. So these graphs here show the 6 months of average daily ridership in the A line, C line, and D line corridors preceding the opening month for those 3 corridors respectively. And then that 6-month average daily ridership following opening day, so the post-opening day, those 6 months. And what we see is a step up in terms of ridership overall. That ridership does vary seasonally, so you do see sort of those monthly trends kind of going up and down depending on when the line opens. So fall and spring tend to be our highest ridership seasons. And so that can affect those overall trends. But in general, we see for the A line and the C line, ranging that initial opening day change, ranging from about 1,000 to 2,000 rides on average per day, which is about a 20% increase or so. And on C line, that increase was, on D line, that increase was considerably more pronounced in the immediate term opening there. So you can see that ridership increased by about 4,000 to 5,000 rides per day on average. The Metro B line, which opened in June of this year, is still pretty early in this process. So we don't have enough data right now to be able to have a graph like this and to be able to see a clear picture of what the sort of immediate before and after looks like, but initial trends are pointing in a positive direction, as we'll see on this next slide. Stepping back a little bit and taking a look at the overall arterial BRT lines in operation in the longer term, what we see is really steady ridership growth over that long term. So this graph shows that average daily ridership in each arterial BRT corridor since its opening. So each line begins at its opening month. That's why the lines sort of start different places along this graph. On A line and C line in particular, we see about 2,000 riders per day from the sort of pandemic lows until now. So going from around that, 2,000 to 4,000 rides per day up to around that like 5,000 to 6,000 rides per day. So a continuing positive trend on those corridors as we continue to recover from immediate pandemic ridership lows.
If I could ask
Go
a
ahead, Commissioner.
question here. In an earlier meeting, it said that they said this would be like salve to me. This would assuage my...
Solace was the word.
Solace or my concerns here, this slide here. What I was hoping for, and I'll just give you what I was hoping for in the context. I'll give you the beeline and numbers as I understand them. In 2019, Route 21, which is the predecessor to the beeline, had 10,000 rides. In 2023, it had 8,400 rides, and now it's got around 8,000 rides. That's the kind of context I wanted to see, would have liked to seen with this slide. In other words, I know why the A line goes all the way back to 2016. That's when it started, but I don't even know what the route number was prior to that, but I just wonder what was the number when it was functioning? And you don't have to go back to 1905, but, that's when it first started transit in that corridor, I understand. But anyhow, I would like to see, what was the high ridership, the historical context of Route 21, and what if these other lines had a direct, like Snelling did, and others.
Sure.
What was the historical high ridership? That's all I wanted to see in a kind of a context like that.
Mr. Chair, committee members, appreciate that question. I think specifically for the Route 21, in the sort of summer of 2023, we observed about 6,300 rides per day on the Route 21. This is August of 2023. And then August data.
Not according to what I found online.
Okay, I would have to, Mr. Chair, committee members, I might have to verify the data that you're referring to.
Okay.
And get back to you on that question. So from the revenue ridership figures that we published, there was about 6,300 rides on Route 21 in 2023. And on that corridor, on the B line in August, there was about 8,600 rides per day. But again, for B line specifically, we are a few months after opening. So I think we want to be just cautious before we're drawing significant conclusions about ridership patterns and behavior.
Yeah. I missed the 8,600. What was that in regards to?
For the Metro B line in August.
Yeah, I'm just looking, and maybe AI is wrong here. It said the ridership range from 7,000 to 8,400. Yeah. 8,400 in the final year before retirement. That's what it said. 8,400 a day. But anyhow, whatever they are, I trust your numbers, but I'd like just to see the historical context, So.
Mr. Chair, yeah, understood. I think we can maybe do some follow-up on.
Okay, thank you.
Directly answer the question that you're.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brose.
Sorry, I'll continue on this slide. So the D line, we also see a similar pattern. I think, again, that increase a little bit more pronounced on those other two corridors, having opened since the start of the pandemic, really increasing from around 7,000 or so rides per day upon initial opening up to about 14,000 rides per day on opening. I also wanted to spend a little bit of time on the overall trends with respect to the capital costs and also funding sources for these corridors over time. So over time, capital costs for these corridors have increased. This is largely due to two related factors. First, corridors on average have gotten longer as the program has matured, and this has really been in response to stakeholder input and a desire to expand the footprint of the metro network and making sure that we are more rapidly able to serve as many people and jobs as we can with this corridor under each corridor, under individual projects as we build out this network. The other factor is that per mile costs, so independent of the length of the corridor, have also increased over time. And this is primarily due to inflation, as of course we're all familiar with, and also as costs within our within our overall construction scope has changed and grown in complexity in each corridor over time as we implement these lines in more complex corridors and start to do more things with them, including bus-only lanes and other roadway modifications and improvements as well. On each of these corridors, you'll see on that sources documentation here, that tab through the regional solicitation process has been an important funder of this program and a contributor to this program's success. So that's most recently demonstrated through the $25 million allocation to the arterial BRT program that has been applied to the F, G, and H lines most recently. So digging in a little bit to our current planning activities, we are undertaking right now this year, Tab will be familiar with this, the 2025 arterial BRT plan update, where our task is to identify the next 3 lines. So you'll recall we've identified out through the H line, which would be implemented through 2030. We're looking to identify the J, K, and L lines, so the next 3 lines planned to open between 2030 and 2035. And our intent would be to submit the corridor that is identified as the J line to the TAB's regional solicitation process. So in essence, the question we're asking is where should the J, K, and L lines actually be? You'll recall this slide, we're undertaking a 4-step plan update process. We are currently in the middle of our evaluation step right now. Earlier this spring, we identified a wide set of candidate corridors for consideration for arterial BRT. So if you recall, we identified 17 candidate corridors at that point. This summer, we conducted a simple screening step to narrow down to our most promising corridors, and we identified 10 corridors to advance to the evaluation step out of that process. That's where we are right now. We're in the process of performing a detailed technical evaluation that will ultimately rank those corridors, 1 through 10 based on that technical score. That technical score will be a contributor to how we prioritize these corridors and identify the JKL lines later this year, this winter. That evaluation result paired with conversations with our roadway partners, paired with thinking about these from a readiness perspective and how they fit within the overall transit network, will be key inputs into identifying the J, K, and L lines. So recall this map, which is those 17 candidate corridors that we shared previously.
If I could ask a question on the candidate corridors. You'll have to dig, and I think this predates Elaine, but 15 years ago or more, there was identified BRT corridors. They were all in Burgundy. And it was stated that if there was more money into the system, these would become priority BRT. They would become the candidate corridors. I guess that's the correct term, or at least the term you're using today. There was one that went into Scott County, which has not appeared on a map for probably since I'm referring to. So if you could go back in time and find those Burgundy corridors, just to see why those disappeared, when it was said that they would, if there was more money in the system, these would become candidate corridors because it's no longer on maps.
Mr. Chair, TAB members, I'll look back to that, I suspect you may be referring to a highway BRT corridor study, in which case, but I'll confirm that to be sure.
Lisa Fries might have some more detail on that if you want to check with her. I can't tell you. Yeah, maybe it was a highway BRT, yeah.
So the results of this graph shows the screening results. So this was shared earlier this summer. Corridors could score up to 100 points, so these scores out of 100, grouped by the 4 goals we have shared previously with TAB. Building on success to grow ridership is there in yellow. Advancing equity and reducing regional disparities is in red. Green is balancing investment with our available resources, and blue is connecting transit-supportive land uses. So you can see each corridor's total score, and then its score within that particular goal is shown on the bar chart there as well. Our goal was to advance somewhere between 8 to 10 corridors for additional evaluation based on sort of where natural breaks occur in that screening, in those screening results. And you can see that line drawn there between Lowry and Hennepin-Larpenteur. So above that line are the corridors that we have advanced into our evaluation process. That was 10 corridors that we advanced. Those corridors below the line are not advancing for arterial BRT. But it's important to note here that arterial BRT is one tool within the Metro Transit Improvement Toolbox. So that's not to say that these corridors aren't good candidates for other types of transit improvements. In fact, the Hennepin-Larpenteur corridor there, which is just below the line, is based on the Route 61, which we've currently just recently implemented a better bus routes set of improvements on that route, where we're improving and consolidating bus stops and making some other speed and reliability improvements. So those types of things are things that we can be doing on these other corridors, and in fact, these corridors are good targets, good candidates for those types of improvements.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I ask?
Member Jean, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask more about the Hennepin and Larpenteur one.
Could you pull your microphone over a little closer, please?
I wanted to ask more about the Hennepin and Larpenteur one. The first question is with the improvements that you shared, that there will be improvements there. How does that get evaluated, or how may we get that update about those improvements to see if we are, driving the outcomes that we would like? And then number 2 is, in this consideration for the corridor screening, did you include the development at the Heights, where we are putting in, 1,000 jobs, 1,000 housing units there? And I also see it as, just a key connector to Century Avenue and Century College, where that is where folks need to get to as well, too, where we have on the east side, we have a very young young population who are still seeking additional higher paying jobs by getting an education, and that's an access point.
Mr. Chair, TAB members, great questions. Specific to how are we evaluating whether we're seeing the improvements there or not, I want to follow back up with the group that is responsible for delivering those implementations to answer your question fully. But we do, look at ridership. We do track customer feedback in those corridors for, what those types of changes are. And 2, just to note that, all of these are good transit corridors, right? I think we, to kind of continue this work, need to draw the line at a point, and doing 10 corridors to evaluate in more detail is the number that we can kind of manage in this process. To answer your question specifically, we do look at planned land uses, so future looking as well as sort of what's out there today. So we did consider planned land uses, what is in communities' comprehensive plans as those are updated, as well as allowable housing densities. So those types of land use decisions are reflected in some of these, as well as key destinations are also considered as well. So things like schools, things like community centers, those are part of that, that connection to transportive land uses consideration.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Member Martinson.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to follow up on that question about Hennepin and Larpenteur, because I've heard others around the table ask similar questions about, and some who aren't around the table any longer, ask questions about how future development is taken into account in these kinds of scoring. Because on the Hennepin and Larpenteur segment in particular, we have the Les Bolstad Golf Course up in Falcon Heights, which is about 130 some acres, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to be developed. And there are some progressive city council members on Falcon Heights. Falcon Heights won't buy it. Ramsey County won't buy it. I wish St. Paul could buy it, but they won't. So someone's going to buy it, and hopefully there'll be a lot of high-density development that will go in there that will substantially bump up, I would imagine, the density of the area and hopefully the demand for ridership. I don't know how one takes that kind of future potential into account in these scoring. So I won't ask how you did that, because I don't think it's very possible. But do these get updated as those land use decisions get made going forward?
Mr. Chair, committee members, another good question. And I think, so we can't take necessarily like a specific individual development into account in terms of when that happens, right? But what we do take is planned future land uses and planned allowable housing densities. But the other key way that we address this ever-growing and changing region and new developments coming up every time is by making sure that this is an iterative process. So that gets to the point that you were making, right? Right now, our effort is to select 3 lines. This is building off of an effort in 2020 and 2021 that selected, the F, G, and H lines, the earlier 3 lines. So we don't ever stop planning here at Metro Transit, and so this is kind of a continuous updating effort, right? So the specific scores per se on this iteration are not, aren't updated. We have to use the data that we have. But we continue to be evaluating, future opportunities as things change and as the dynamics around a particular corridor changes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Member Cashman.
Thank you, Chair. What does the green balanced investment with available resources really mean? Is that whether there's county or city contributions, or how does that come to be?
Mr. Chair, committee members, in the case of our screening, this is essentially trying to get at what is the cost of this service? So in this screening effort, what we were looking at is the difference between the existing frequency, so the existing level of service in a particular corridor, and what would be planned for an arterial BRT line. So how much extra service would Metro Transit have to allocate to a corridor to bring it up to the arterial BRT level of frequencies that we would expect?
Okay, so Franklin scored highly then because it already has so much service there that would be kind of easier to replace with BRT?
Mr. Chair, committee members, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kyle, question. Was Met Transit driving the evaluation of these decisions about these 3, the 10 that are moving forward? Is it all a Met Transit decision?
Mr. Chair, committee members, so Metro Transit is leading the study process. We are working in coordination with our stakeholders, including our city and county partners, as well as working on outreach and engagement efforts, as well as consulting with our policymakers, the Metropolitan Council, and of course, engaging TAB as well.
Well, I think more input from your partners early on. That's what I'm hearing. Basically, it was, I hate to say it was pretty much non-existent. so that's not the way we do work. I want to reference slide 12. If you could go to slide 12.
Yep.
Half the slides aren't marked. It's the one that lists the 10 routes that are, yep, right there. I apologize. Now, I like Hennepin and Ramsey County, and they're high density, but these are all basically, all the money is being spent in Hennepin and Ramsey County. And I just think, and if you go to slide 7, one showing, I think if you wanted to disperse a little bit of money around the region, some of these get very expensive. And I think if you use criteria of, maybe there's others that are more cost effective, maybe the ridership wouldn't be quite as high, but when you look at the investment, how many more routes you could get. Also, if you timed it, I'm just gonna use one. The only one that would qualify in Washington County would be, and it would be shared with Ramsey County, be on our border, Century Avenue. That's a turnback project.
Yeah, Barbara.
What better way to invest? You almost kind of get that RTO bus rapid transit free if you do it in conjunction with the turnback. I think if you'd involve the counties, cities, partners early on, maybe there would be a better way of looking at this. So I'm be quite frank, I'm a bit disappointed what's moving forward. This is all contained very close, Hennepin and Ramsey County. They're very worthy routes. I'm just saying we really need to spend some money in the region. A wider band. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I profoundly disagree that we've not interacted with counties and communities about how we structure this. I think it goes back to some of the earlier conversation and even what Commissioner Ulrich was, we did find it was from the 2030 TPP, the map you're talking about, and it was for transit ways, which is different than ABRTs. And so we have to look at this as a full system. There are places that ABRTs are going to be very successful. There's going to be other places where we have to look at maybe a hybrid between an ABRT or highway BRT, or a highway BRT such as the Gold Line. Like, there are different places throughout the region of what's going to work. So this is something where we have to prioritize where can we build in the next few years. Like, this isn't 10 projects. We're picking the next 3 so that we can get it on the queue, so we can start finding funding sources and all of that. As you all know, no different than roads and bridges that you all have to find different sources, we have to do the same thing. So that is part of this priority focus. We're also at the same time looking at transit ways overall. We've been looking at a very similar map for quite a while. We've been able to build some of those things out, like the Orange Line, the Gold Line, and the ABRT system. But it's also like, where else do we need to go now that we are in a different position? And that's sort of one of those activities that we're going to be working on over the next couple of years.
Go ahead, Mr. Pearl.
Thank you, Chair. So continuing on, this map shows those 10 corridors that were listed on the previous slide. They're also shown alongside the other existing and planned metro corridors, so we get a better sense of kind of how these might fit into the overall planned network, as well as overlaid underneath the transit market areas. So where we expect the highest transit ridership in our region, those darker blue areas, market areas 1 and 2. Not shown on this map, but advancing with these corridors into the evaluation step is the West 7th corridor, which folks might be familiar with, from downtown St. Paul to the Mall of America. And as Tab will know, Metro Transit, along with other project partners, had been working on a new multimodal concept there that would have included a higher level of BRT, along with some of the other multimodal improvements and a broader street reconstruction. Folks may have seen earlier this month that the city of St. Paul has announced that concept is no longer moving forward. As partners, we're sort of unable to reach agreement on a funding plan on that coordinated project. As an outcome of that work, Metro Transit is bringing that corridor, the West 7th corridor, from downtown St. Paul to the Mall of America into the arterial BRT plan update process. So we'll be adding that corridor in, an 11th corridor, not dropping any of the corridors off that have been already advanced forward. We are actively working on that right now to sort of incorporate the outcome of that planning work and the historic planning work on that corridor into our work. As part of that, we are updating some of the screening results to see where that corridor would have landed, including documenting on a technical memo there. That corridor would have scored 4th out of the 11 corridors, so would have moved forward through the screening step had it been included. So we're working on making sure that we have that documentation and able to share that as an amendment to the work we've already done at this point.
Mr. Chair, may I ask?
Yes, Member
Just to
Zhang, go
clarify,
ahead.
So you will be adding West 7 there to this list?
Mr. Chair, that's correct, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
So wrapping up quickly here, summarizing some of the outreach and engagement work that was done this summer. Our goal really here was to get feedback on the overall screening results and then getting that specific community knowledge on the specific corridors. So asking about missing destinations, potential alignment changes we should be considering in future planning. And our goal there was to really meet our riders where they were and community members where they were. So utilizing pop-ups on board our transit network along these corridors, as well as getting out and riding buses. And we joined 24 community events sort of through this area here. So we've got a number of conversations with riders at those pop-ups and a number of comments on our primary tool here, which was that online interactive map, which you can see on the slides here, really getting pretty detailed comments and place-specific comments on each corridor. So it's really been a very valuable tool for us as we're continuing this planning work moving forward. Right now, we are working on that corridor evaluation, so applying those more detailed evaluation criteria to each corridor and then ranking those corridors based on those technical scores. We're also working on, as I mentioned, operationalizing and applying those outreach and engagement activities and lessons learned from that. We'll begin to then be moving into later this year and early next year, that corridor prioritization process, where we'll be applying those technical evaluation results, information we've gained from our outreach and engagement, and some readiness criteria, thinking about how these corridors fit within our network to help us prioritize those next 3 lines. And really, throughout this process, but as we are especially continuing that corridor prioritization process, partner coordination is really going to be key, where we're working with our roadway partners to make sure that planned and programmed projects are aligned with the corridors that are advancing, and we can be utilizing some of those coordinated projects to sort of deliver these projects more efficiently. With that, I'll thank the body and stand for any additional questions.
Questions again for Ms. Burrows? Yes. Go ahead, Member Johnson.
You answered one of my questions already, which is fantastic about West 7th. Really curious about that, so glad to hear that's being considered and would have rated well on that. So one specific one, I looked back at the January presentation from 2025, and it talked about JKL, but then also ABRT network optimization, and stated that it was going to include potential extensions, which caught my ear, infill stations, other changes. So kind of where is that at, and is it something that's just continuing to be discussed, or where did that land in the process?
Mr. Chair, members, that work is still being scoped and is something that's on our work plan for 2026.
Okay, that's helpful. Just want to make sure that was still happening. I think in my mind, I thought the C line, is like an obvious candidate. Even seeing sort of the ridership differences, I had never seen them sort of put side by side like that, where yes, there's a bump for the C line, but then you look at the D line, which is more or less parallel through north to downtown, just exploded in the number of riders. So it's such an interesting thing. Is that because it goes through to South Minneapolis, and sort of what are the trade-offs? So I'm very interested in hearing more about that in 2026. And then the other one, I don't necessarily expect an answer out of this one, but I think one thing that's kind of been touched on in a few places here is sort of the challenge of these types of programs upgrading existing routes make the most sense where we already have high ridership. This is just adding more to that ridership. So it's hard to sort of compare that apples to apples with a transit expansion project or something like that. I mean, these are just in high density areas. They're going to do really well. And just how much of this is bound up in land use? To kind of boil it down, like if we want to put in a transit expansion into an area like an ABRT, you would have to have high density planned there. And I think that's something that's sort of missing. I think this kind of connects to Member Martinson's comment. You would have to have a development that really was designed with that level of density to sort of make that work in the same way. And I was thinking about this in terms of, if you put this into a low density area with all the BRT features and weren't planning for that, just how much that would cost per rider over time to sort of expand that network. And that's kind of why we have the Metro microservice. I took that to my parents yesterday in Bloomington, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense for the context. I wouldn't expect an ABRT going to my parents on the Minnesota Bluffs, So I think that's just something to think about is maybe to, remember Barbara's comment, it's figuring out what are all our different options and what makes sense in all of them with limited resources. But, ABRT does what it does really well, but it is limited to just this scope within Metro Transits, because I think the only other one I've ever heard about was MBTA was planning one on Highway 42, I think was in the works for a bit. And if that's the only other one for sort of that potential, and that might even been highway BRT, I don't know. I think that's just, we can only focus on this for Metro Transit's work, and that makes our jobs a little bit tougher to think regionally in this. So more of a comment than anything else, but thank you for your work.
Member Cashman.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to ask one more question, Kyle, and thank you so much for the presentation. What do you attribute the success of the D line to? Because the ridership numbers are just so high, and just wondering how the success of the D line can guide the decision making of the future.
Mr. Chair, members, it's a multifaceted, so there's no single cause to change in ridership, right? So the Route 5 was the highest ridership local route in our system historically for a long time. It is a really significant corridor through Minneapolis and the kind of immediate suburbs, connecting major points north to the Mall of America. So it really hits that kind of ridership kind of formula of having high frequency service along high density corridors through high density areas and connecting major destinations.
Okay. And then wanted to ask about the F line too, because that's coming up. And did I see correctly that there's a $16 million local match on that? And is that the city?
Mr. Chair, committee members, that's not the city. That's the local regional match for a federal funding through the small starts.
Okay, thank you. And is the plan for the F line to go along Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis?
That is the plan right now. Yep.
Okay, because again, that has 5 really successful bus lines currently. That some of the highest ridership, so I anticipate that the F line will also be really successful because it currently has bus lines that are so high ridership.
Mr. Chair, committee members, yeah, the F line is based primarily off of the Route 10, which is among the higher ridership lines, local service routes currently.
Okay, thank you so much.
Member Barber. Then Member
Thank you,
Foster.
Mr. Chair. Very quickly, I can at least give you my observations of the D line. So I think because it connects both from a strong southern anchor at the Mall of America and connects up at the north and at Brooklyn Center. You're getting both our commuters into the city, but you're also getting people commuting to jobs at places like the Mall of America, Blue Line over to the airport, some of those other things. So I think, because you see the D line, when you go on it, it's busy all day, every day. And I think it's a lot of people working different shift work and things like that we're seeing on that. And so I think that's one of the things I think, not only in addition to ridership, it's sort of looking at workers and their target destinations along the line is one part of it. But that's my not supported by science response to that question.
All right, Member Foster, let's have your opinion.
No, on what?
On this.
I really know.
This is all of them.
I mean, on the F line, on the D line, it goes past 3 hospitals. It goes to the Mall of America. It goes like Midtown Global Market, North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis. It hits the sweet spots of where you want to go in Minneapolis. Like, that's it. Everybody takes it, whether you want to or not.
Commissioner Jepson.
But that was not what I was raising my hand for.
Okay.
I have a question. Did you say the F line is still being planned to go down Nicollet Mall?
Mr. Chair, committee members, there's really no change to policy right now about.
Okay. And are you in conversations with the city of Minneapolis around their ideas of what should happen on Nicollet Mall?
Chair Hovland, if I might.
Yes.
Katie Roth, Director of Arterial BRT at Metro Transit. Member Foster, thank you for the question. Our current project as construed on the F-line corridor includes the current Route 10 alignment that travels down Nicollet Mall. We continue conversations with the city of Minneapolis as they have advanced their intent around studying multiple alternatives for where transit would go in downtown, and we're going to continue those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jepson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Stan, I feel your pain. I totally understand your argument, but I think I've come to the conclusion that the fact of the matter is that Metro Transit is only going to expand their services to suburbs like ours through microtransit and not busing, because it just doesn't make sense, because the density is not there for the ridership. So the change in comparison between per rider loss is far, far greater. My concern, though, is the funding of this. All of us county commissioners know the pain and the exhaustion that we went through in this last legislative session to hold on to our active transportation dollars, and thankfully we were successful in doing that this session. I'm wondering if in part of your work, funding was explored, and if it was, if those active transportation dollars that currently counties get through designations created in 2023, is that legislation that was attempted this past session going to move forward harder to afford these projects?
Mr. Chair, I'll take that question. All right, so basically, yes, we are looking at how we're going to fund ABRT lines into the future. We've been very fortunate to have bonding be another part of the match to the TAB dollars to date. I think that we haven't completely figured that part out for some of these lines. That's part of why we need to get all these on the map and kind of an idea of what the costs are. We were not part of that move last year to try and work with the active transportation money for the from the counties, and I've heard no discussion of it for the upcoming session. I do think we do have to have serious conversations with local funding partners for some of these ABRT lines as we get further out, because while Met Council and Metro Transit got increased funding with the sales tax, that really is our operations and maintenance, and so capital building is not in there. So, but it's a conversation that we will have to have, but I think that's not where we're directing our thoughts right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Okay, so I can't let this moment go by. The problem that we have is that Met Council is controlled by the governor. And when the governor takes away $25 million a year of general fund money, structurally, Metro Transit can't fight that. So now every penny of state money for transit actually goes to greater Minnesota. Because little by little, whether it was the quarter-cent sales tax, whatever, then my transit gets looking kind of good, and then there's a budget problem, and we saw last year them taking away, well, it wasn't at 26 million a year structurally. So, what? He'll correct me.
He's gonna get the right number for me.
Mr. Chair, off the top of my head, I believe it went from about 32 million a year to around 2 million in the next 2 years, and then ongoing 32 million down to, I believe, 20 or so.
Right, so here's the point for those of you that are not appointed by the governor to serve on this, that are here representing your area. It makes no sense to me that the Metro has no state general fund funding support. There should be parity, in other words, right? If we as state tax dollars are funding half of the operating of the greater Minnesota transit system, there should be state dollars going to Metro Transit. Leave the damn counties money, their lousy little 17%, and say that we want the Metro to be treated in the same way that greater Minnesota Transit is treated, with state dollars as well. We shouldn't do any worse than they do. There should be some parity.
I
So,
believe I'll let Commissioner Philbrook actually lobby for that.
well, I mean, you guys can't say anything. That's the absurdity of this quote-unquote Metro unelected, appointed by the governor political thing, is that this organization can't go against the governor, but many, many times that leaves the metro area unable to lobby at the legislature for what would be best for the region. And it's decades old, and I had to make the point because you guys can't.
Thank you for that. The one thing that we have done we are very fortunate as a region because of the sales tax, the sales and use tax. We've done 25-year projections out for operations and capital maintenance and some of those things. We are so lucky to have that piece of things because we're having this conversation around a table where in a lot of other regions around the country, they're having the conversations that we have to cut everything or we have to stop this. So I'd much rather have this discussion because at least we are planning and trying to figure out how to plan well and operate well into the future. And it's really been a game changer for our region, and most regions wish they were like us right now, so.
So when you go to the legislature next spring, forget about having Judd go over there, have Mary Liz go over there with you.
I served my time.
Don't make her do it.
I escaped.
Any other questions, observations? I've got a couple for you as you work on this ABRT. First of all, I think Stan caused me to think about, Commissioner Karwoski caused me to think a little bit about local control. And whether you're a city or a county, I don't think the voice is adequately heard or appreciated on these ABRT lines. There's listening going on, but there's not really adoption in my mind in terms of suggestions that come from cities or counties on what to do. And the second thing, and equally or more important, is that when you're talking about funding these things, don't ever think about doing anywhere else what you did at 50th and France and come in there and disrupt everything and not have any kind of an impact fund. You got to make impact part of your consideration if you're going through a small business district. Our merchants were really banged up for a year because of Morcon and their mediocre performance, I'll call it. So make sure if any of these lines that you build, that you take into consideration what the locals have to heart, and you take into consideration impact on merchants and neighborhoods that they're going through, where they're obviously going through dense parts of communities where there are commercial nodes that are really important to those neighborhoods and the city's vitality. And it's so disruptive that you just can't do that. Don't do that. Make sure you figure out a way to it's not that complicated to figure out how to compensate them for the lost business they're going to suffer. And they will suffer. There you go.
Kyle, if I could.
I know you were because we walked around 50th and France a lot.
Correct, but I would also recall that there are 3 projects that converged at the same time. There was a county and city project and the F-line project, or the E-line project, all at the same time, which was, it's good because it's disruptive once, it's bad because it's very disruptive. There's also limits on what at council we can do from a statutory perspective regarding help with having a business fund. So it is something we're looking into and trying to find out. There was a process along the Green Line, but it was an independent group that did it, and we are looking into see if there are ways to have something in the future, but we believe we likely need to have some laws changed for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good thought. Okay, thank you. Well, here we are at the end of the meeting. We still have one matter to take up here. Let's see here. Mr. Dugan, Member Dugan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to make an observation on if I may, on the B line at particularly the Chicago Lake stop, which is, I go by it frequently. And I'm interested or curious why the shelters have a beautiful mosaic on it, lovely done, but it blocks any visibility from police going by. Anything could happen there in the shelter, and no one would see it. It's completely, you can't see through it, and it seems to be not anyway. It was just an observation from someone who doesn't take that line, just going by and saying, would I want to stand in there at 10 at night?
I think there's some live and learn concept there, because all of the ones along France Avenue you can see right into all of them. There's nothing that obscures vision.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, here we are. We're at TBI. Mr. Farmer, can you be speedy for us?
Mr. Chair, board members, yes, I can be speedy. My name is Dennis Farmer. I'm the manager of the travel forecasting team in Metropolitan Transportation Services, and I'm excited to be here today.
Pull that microphone towards you just a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm excited to be here just to give a brief presentation on the Travel Behavior Inventory Program, or TBI. So the Travel Behavior Inventory, or TBI, is our data collection program that supports the regional travel forecast model, as well as transportation generally across the region. Surveys of how people travel across the region have been an important part of the TBI program. We've been doing surveys across the region since about the 1940s. But in the mid-2010s, with support from the Transportation Advisory Board and from the Minnesota Department of Transportation, we transitioned from doing surveys every 10 years to doing smaller surveys every 2 years. We also do an onboard survey of transit riders in addition to the household surveys. We do these transit surveys every 5 years. So some background about the model that uses the TBI data. Our region, like all regions, large regions, uses a travel forecasting model as well as some other tools to help us in transportation planning. These models are used to help us get regional performance measures for our transportation system. They help us evaluate projects. We use them to evaluate things for funding. We also use them for environmental analysis. We regularly update these models in order to reflect how the network is changing, in order to reflect how travel behavior is changing, and also to respond to emerging questions we get from stakeholders and from planners. A big part of updating the model is using more recent data that we get from the TBI. So, since we refreshed this program in the middle of the 2010s, we have submitted funding requests each cycle to fund the program, and this funding comes from 3 sources. 1/3 of it comes from regional solicitations, 1/3 of it comes from the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and the other third comes from local council sources. All these funding requests come through, first come through a regional travel forecasting committee, which was formed when the TBA program kicked off in 2017. This committee consists of technical folks from the Metropolitan Council, including Metro Transit, from counties, from the DOTs in Minnesota and Wisconsin, cities, as well as researchers from the University of Minnesota. This slide just gives a brief review of the funding history. In 2016, there was a large source of funding to kind of kick off the studies. This funding also financed or funded 3 waves of household surveys, a 2019, a 2021, and a 2023 household survey. It also funded a 2022 transit onboard survey. The 2018 and the 2022 funding requests for the regional solicitations are going to fund a 2026 and a 2028 household survey. The 2024 request will partially fund the 2028 household survey and also a new 2027 transit onboard survey. We have a placeholder here for 2026, 1.5 million for upcoming work. This money will be, or this cost will be refined as we actually do or develop the work program for those, for that cycle. Almost done.
Is that 1.5 what you need from the tab?
Yes, that'll be the regional solicitation.
The request for the tab?
Yeah, and like I said, it's a placeholder. We'll refine it when we come in 2026 based on the work plan, the actual work plan. This is just a list of projects that have been funded or will be funded by the TBI program. The one on the left are things that are complete. The one on the right are upcoming, including the 2026 household travel survey. That is being worked on right now. The project team right now is developing a survey and planning to put it out in the field in 2026. These are some likely projects that will be part of the 2026 solicitation request. Again, the actual amount and the projects will be refined before they get to you then.
Yeah, you did. I mean, it's really important work, and I think we all understand that how critical it is. So we appreciate that fast update.
Thank you.
And it doesn't truncate the importance of what you're doing in any way. We understand the importance of it. So
thank you, Chair.
Any
Board
questions?
members.
Quick questions for Mr. Farmer? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Farmer. I don't have anything else to report on our policymaker work group. I reported on that earlier. The only other thing I thought of was that we're going to try to get all of our work done as an organization, whether it's a policymaker work group or the TAB, on this next regional solicitation by the end of 2026. Because I think in this group, we've got the knowledge and the experience and the wisdom to be able to handle this variation on theme of the traditional sort of regional solicitation. So I think we agreed in the policymaker work group today that the best thing to do is to try to get all of our work done on this next solicitation by December 31, 2026. So stay tuned for some fast acceleration next year. Thanks. Member Johnson.
I'll be equally fast. The Active Transportation Work Group has one more meeting scheduled for October. I think there's still an open question as we get public comment back. I mean, if we hear from the public that there's major things they want to see changed, I mean, maybe we have to meet again, but certainly do some wrap-up work to make sure that we're leaving notes for the next iteration. I mean, we've done a lot this time around, but again, my vice chair and I made a list of just what things did we not get to. And of course, you know, as chairs, that's the best thing to do at the end of a work group is just hopefully pass on your notes, but it doesn't feel great when you think about all the stuff you didn't get to. But we want to have a good starting place for the next time around, and we expect that would probably be for the 2028 solicitation, unless there's a change and people want to do yearly, in which case is 2027. So just again, we want to leave our notes and make sure it's easy for the next group to pick up where we left off.
Okay, good. Any questions for Chair Johnson? Anything for the good of the order? Oh, Member Dugan, go ahead.
If I may, I think our interim chair deserves a round of applause. That's great.
All right. Anything else from our members? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.